Parents pleaded, "We're not that bad, are we?" And I watched them flinch at a story I edited down to the mild parts. We were sitting at my tiny dining table, knees almost touching because my apartment is basically one step up from a shoebox. My mom's hand hovered halfway to her mouth, a forkful of salad forgotten. My dad stared at the wood grain like if he glared hard enough it would open up and swallow him. The room suddenly felt too small, too bright. I could hear the fridge humming, the clock ticking on the wall, my own heartbeat in my ears. I just finished telling them about one night, one of the less bad ones, and even trimmed all the sharp edges off it. No plates thrown, no belt, just raised voices, slammed doors, and me hiding in my room. And still, they both flinched like I'd thrown boiling water. It was a Sunday afternoon. I'd invited them over, which was already weird because usually if we see each other, it's at their place, on their turf, with their rules and their version of events. But my therapist had suggested gently that if I wanted to try a conversation with them, it might be easier on my ground. "You can leave your own home," she'd said. "You don't have to storm out of theirs." It made sense in that logical, adult way that most of my body disagrees with. But I said yes, texted them, "Come for lunch? I'll cook." Mom's reply pinged back almost instantly. "We'd love that. Dad's so happy you reached out." Dad sent a thumbs-up emoji, which is his way of saying he's overwhelmed by having to text at all. So I spent the morning making roasted vegetables and chicken, because I wanted something that felt adult and calm. I cleaned my apartment more than necessary. I hid all my medication in the top cupboard so I wouldn't have to hear Mom make a comment about all those pills like they're jelly beans. They came in already talking. Mom commented on the neighborhood, on how cute my building is. "It's so small," in that backhanded way. Dad complained about parking. We did the usual dance. Work, weather, how's your sister? I could feel the actual conversation sitting between us like a third guest, but no one touched it. It wasn't until we sat down to eat that Mom said, "You seem different lately," and not in the nice way. More like, "What have you done to your hair?" but for personality. "I'm in therapy," I said, because I'd decided I wasn't going to lie about it anymore. Dad made a face. "Still, it's not antibiotics," I said. "It's not a 2-week course." Mom sighed. "We just don't understand what you have to talk about for that long. We weren't that bad, were we?" Then, as if to soften it, she laughed. "Right, Dad?" I looked at their faces and made a decision. I picked one story, one of the smaller ones, the kind I've told friends with a joking tone. And I told it as gently as possible. "Do you remember?" I started. "That night when I was about 10 and you two were fighting about money? And I came out of my room because I was scared. And you..." I looked at Dad. "Told me to go back to bed before you, gave me something to cry about, and then you slammed my door so hard the frame cracked." Their reaction was immediate. Mom's shoulders tensed. Dad's eyes narrowed, like he was trying to place the memory and couldn't. "That's what you talk about?" Dad said after a second, voice careful. "That's one of them," I said. "And that's a tame one. We're not that bad, are we?" Mom said, and this time there was no laugh on the end of it, just raw panic. And that's when I realized, even the watered-down version of my childhood is too much for them. Growing up, "We're not that bad" was kind of the unspoken rule in our house. The bar for bad parents was set at things like locking your kids in the basement or being drunk 24/7. Anything short of that? Fine. Normal. Character building. We lived in a semi-detached house with beige walls and a lawn Dad obsessed over. Mom worked part-time at a pharmacy. Dad worked full-time in logistics, which as a kid I thought meant he moved boxes around, but apparently meant he yelled at people on the phone about shipments. We had matching family Christmas pajamas. We had a fridge covered in school photos and doctor's appointments and those "you were loved" magnets from dollar stores. The photos are real. So are the magnets. None of them show me lying awake at night, listening to the floorboards creak, trying to gauge if tonight was a just shouting night or a hole in the wall night. The thing I always bump up against when I try to explain my childhood is that there's no big event. No one called CPS. I never ended up in the ER for real. My parents fed us, clothed us, drove us to activities. There's a skin of normalcy over everything, which makes you feel insane when your body reacts like it remembers a war. The mild story I told them at lunch wasn't mild. Really? It was just one that didn't involve anyone getting grabbed or pushed. It was a Tuesday night. I was 10. They were at the table with bills spread out, this island of paper and red numbers. Dad's jaw was already clenched, which meant I approached at my own risk. "Can I have help with my homework?" I'd asked from the doorway, hugging my notebook to my chest. I'd rehearsed how to ask. Casual, light, not whiny. "Not now," Mom said, not looking up. I turned to go back to my room. Then Dad snapped, "Jesus, can we have 5 minutes without you needing something?" Something in my chest crumpled. I hadn't thought I was asking for a lot. Just someone to look at my long division so I wouldn't get yelled at for getting it wrong tomorrow. I felt my eyes sting. "Don't start crying," Dad said. "You're not a baby." I'm not," I'd stammered. "I just—" "Go to your room," he barked, "before I give you something to cry about." I bolted down the hallway. The slam of my bedroom door made the whole house shake. 10-year-old me jumped like someone had set off a bomb. I remember sitting on my bed, heart pounding, staring at the crack forming along the door frame, thinking, "You did that. You're the problem. You make him angry." What I did not include in the version I told them at lunch was the part where I spent the rest of the night trying to make it up to them. How I cleaned the kitchen quietly while they watched TV. How I wrote them a note that said, "I'm sorry for being annoying," and left it on the table. How the next morning, Dad said, "See, when you're good, things are peaceful." Like I had that much control. I left all that out. I didn't mention the pit in my stomach, the knots in my shoulders, the way that sentence turned into a life philosophy. Be good, be quiet, keep the peace. Don't ask for help unless you want to be a burden. Even just the bare bones of it made them look like someone had opened a window in winter. Dad cleared his throat. "You're exaggerating," he said, finally. "We were stressed. Everyone snaps now and then." "You slammed the door hard enough to crack the frame," I said. "The crack is still there. You can go look at it." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Mom shook her head. "We never meant to scare you like that," she said. "You know we were going through a lot. Money was tight. Your father's hours were crazy. There it was. The explanation they've been using since forever. Context as eraser." "I know," I said. "I know things were hard. But you asked what I talk about in therapy. That's one of the things." "You talk about us?" Mom asked like that was a betrayal. "You're my parents," I said. "You're a big part of my life. Of course I talk about you." Dad scoffed. "So you go pay some stranger to tell you it was all our fault." "No one has to tell me that," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I meant. I have a nervous system that goes into fight or flight when someone raises their voice. My body already did the math. I could hear how it sounded, dramatic, maybe, therapist-why. But it was the truest thing I'd said yet. What I wanted to explain, but knew I couldn't without this turning into World War III, was how it wasn't about one night. It was the accumulation, the constant low-level fear, the way everything could be fine, laughing and joking, and then Dad would spill beer on the floor, and suddenly it was the end of the world and we were useless and good for nothing. The way Mom's moods dictated the entire weather in the house. How if she was sad, I became her therapist. If she was angry, I became the outlet. There was the time she told me, when I was 12, about how she'd wanted to get an abortion but decided to keep you because I'm not that kind of person. She said it like she was confiding in a friend, not dumping something nuclear into my adolescent brain. I spent years thinking I owed her my gratitude just for being here. Meanwhile, every time I messed up a chore, she'd say, "After everything we've done for you, we're not that bad, are we? Here's the thing. If you have to ask, you already know the answer." At the table, Mom's eyes were shiny. She looked down at her plate and pushed lettuce around with her fork like a bored kid. "You could have told us you were. That it upset you that much," she said. "We would have tried harder." I took a breath. This was the fork in the road my therapist had prepared me for. Reassure and backpedal? It's not that big a deal. I'm just being dramatic. Or tell the truth and watch the fallout. I didn't know how to tell you, I said. I tried sometimes. I'd say, that hurt my feelings, or why are you yelling? And you'd say I was oversensitive or being a brat. So I learned to keep it to myself. That's part of the problem. Dad put his fork down with a clatter. We're not perfect, he said, for probably the first time in his life. But we weren't monsters. I never called you monsters, I said. You're the ones using that word. Mom gave the strangled little laugh. Well, you make us sound like it. I shrugged, even though my chest felt tight. I make it sound like what it was from my side. There was a long pause. My anxiety brain started filling it with all the things they might say with the old familiar soundtrack. Ungrateful, dramatic, liar. Instead, my dad surprised me. What else do you talk about? He asked, almost challenging. I could have gone for the jugular. I could have brought up the time he shoved me into a doorframe when I was 17 because I wouldn't hand over my phone. Or the time he punched a hole in the wall next to my head and then told everyone at Christmas that I ran into it. I could have mentioned Mom sobbing on my bed about how she was trapped and would kill herself, then telling me I was selfish when I cried because it made it all about you. Instead, I picked another edited story. The night I made dinner at 12 years old because Mom was in bed with a migraine, and Dad was sulking in front of the TV, and when I burned the rice he told me I was useless, then ate the whole plate anyway because he was hungry. That's just how people talked back then, Mom said weakly. Tough love. I didn't feel loved, I said. I felt terrified of you, both of you, all the time. They both flinched again. Not from guilt exactly, from the horror of seeing themselves through someone else's eyes. Kids are scared of their parents sometimes, Dad said. Keeps them in line. I stared at him. I wasn't scared of consequences, I said. I was scared of you. I used to know what mood you were in by the way your car door shut when you came home. I could tell by your footsteps in the hallway whether I had 5 seconds to hide whatever I was doing or whether I'd be okay. That's not respect. That's hypervigilance. Dad frowned. He hates not understanding words. Hyper what? Hypervigilance, I repeated. Always on alert, like a smoke alarm that never turns off. You're being dramatic, he said, right on cue. And you asked? I shot back. You asked what therapy is about. You asked if you were that bad. I'm giving you the PG version. PG? Mom squeaked. I looked at her, really looked, at the worry lines that have deepened since I moved out, at the way her hands trembled slightly, an echo of my own. One of the hardest parts about this process has been realizing that my parents are, in fact, human beings with their own damage. It makes it harder to neatly package them as villains, easier to slip back into making excuses. I'm leaving out a lot, I said, because I don't think you're ready to hear it. And honestly, I don't know if I want to be the one to make you. Mom swallowed. Like what? I shrugged. Like the times I thought about killing myself as a teenager. Like the way your voices in my head were louder than my own. Like the fact that I still struggle to believe I'm not inherently a burden. Silence again. Mom's eyes filled. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't say you thought those things. I did, I said. I don't anymore. I got help. But back then, I did. And I didn't tell you, because your reactions to smaller feelings had already taught me it wasn't safe. She reached across the table like she wanted to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it and pulled back. We didn't know, she said. I know you didn't, I said. I'm not telling you this so you'll grovel. I'm telling you because you keep saying we're not that bad. Like that should be enough. Like as long as you weren't the worst parents in the world, I'm not allowed to be hurt. Dad exhaled loudly, rubbed his temples. So what, you want us to just sit here and let you list off everything we did wrong? No, I said. I want you to hear me without immediately defending yourselves. That's it. That's literally it. He made a noise somewhere between a scoff and a sigh. But, miracle of miracles, he didn't speak. So I kept going slowly. Not with specific horror stories, but with how it felt. Waking up every day anxious. The knot in my stomach when my name was called. The relief of being at school, which is wild because school sucked. The way my body still reacts to someone saying my full name in a certain tone. I know you had stress, I said. I know you had your own crap. I know your parents were worse. But knowing that doesn't unscare the kid I was. It doesn't unwire my brain. And I'm tired of carrying it like a secret because I'm afraid it'll hurt your feelings. Mom cried then. Real tears, not the sharp, angry ones she sometimes weaponizes. She covered her face with her hand. We tried, she said through her fingers. We really tried. I believe you, I said. And I do. You just didn't try in the ways I needed. And sometimes you didn't try at all. You took it out on us. Dad's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. What do you want from us now? That question used to paralyze me. I used to think the only acceptable answer was, nothing, you've done enough, I'm fine, it's fine. The truth is simpler and harder. I want you to stop asking if you were that bad and start accepting that you were bad enough, I said. Bad enough that I needed therapy. Bad enough that I don't feel fully safe around you. Bad enough that I've distanced myself. And I want you to stop using "we weren't that bad" to shut me up. And if we can't? He asked. Then this, I gestured between us. We'll stay shallow, polite, birthdays and texts about the weather. And I'll keep doing my real healing somewhere else. Mom sobbed harder. So we lose you. You lost pieces of me a long time ago, I said, before I could soften it. When you called me names. When you ignored me. When you made me your emotional punching bag. I'm just not pretending those pieces aren't gone anymore. Sounded harsh even to my ears, but also accurate. We didn't resolve anything that afternoon. That's the part Instagram healing narratives skip. Nobody stood up, declared themselves changed, and hugged me while gentle music swelled. Eventually, Mom went to the bathroom to fix her makeup. Dad asked if there was more chicken. We talked about my job. We talked about my sister. We talked about TV shows. Every now and then, I'd catch Mom looking at me like she was seeing a stranger. As they were putting on their shoes to leave, Mom touched my arm. Thank you for lunch, she said. Her voice was soft. And for being honest. I nodded. Thanks for coming. Dad opened the door, then paused. You know, he said, not looking at me. My old man never talked about anything. Just hit first, drank later. I thought if I yelled more and hit less, that was progress. It was the nearest thing to self-reflection I'd ever heard from him. It was, I said, for you, not for me. He grimaced, then gave a stiff little nod and walked out. After they left, I sat down on the floor in the hallway and shook for a bit. My cat came over and headbutted my knee like, okay, dramatic monologue is over, pet me now. I don't know what happens next with them. I don't know if they'll try to change, or if this will become another family lore moment. Remember when you ambushed us at lunch? I don't know if my dad will ever fully get it. I don't know if my mom will keep poking the wound with "we weren't that bad." Were we? Hoping one day I'll say, no, you were great. I made it all up. What I do know is this. Today, when they asked, we're not that bad, are we? I didn't rush in to comfort them. I didn't say, of course not, I'm just oversensitive. I watched them flinch at a story I'd already edited down, and I let the flinch sit. It feels awful and freeing at the same time. If anyone reading this grew up on, "we weren't that bad" instead of "we're sorry," I don't have a neat lesson for you. Just this. You're allowed to tell the truth, even if you have to water it down to start. You're allowed to let other people be uncomfortable for once. And you're allowed to decide that "not that bad" still wasn't good enough.